Well, hello, Dr. Chris Lemmon, and this is the chat for the month of October. I have to think what month we're going into. Um, and so we've been talking this year about the concept of teaching. Last year, I did a lot of work with building range. Range means thinking past the limits of what you normally think, what you normally perceive, getting a bigger chunk, more information. And that's what it's designed to do. And this year, I came back, and the blogs are basically how to start to work with that range and be able to implement potential into it. And rather than chat about all that, it's kind of really cut and dry. I decided to talk a little bit about the concept of teaching. So now we've got into October, and so I do a little bit of review. The original idea that I said inspired me, I really believe that there's a lot of potential for people to do things in a different way. My personal drive was, for me in the very beginning, it was health reasons, but then it came to a lot of skill sets, like what can I do? What can I do here? What can I do there? So I started finding out, like, how could I fulfill that potential? How could I implement these ideas and make that happen? That was my personal drive. And then it became a focus of my education. And eventually then I started teaching. What I had learned is that there's a lot of things that influence us by design, and we're not conscious of most all those things by design, because if nothing else, the first law of thermodynamics, the law of conservation, which, I mean, all those was developed about diesel engines, but most certainly we humans conserve. If you're reading a book, your attention goes on the book, things going outside, and you can pretty much ignore them. You narrow your attention down. We're really good at narrowing down. We have a lot of trouble broadening it out. But true potential is always an unknown. Something you could do that you don't know anything about. That's what potential is. So that's opportunity. So to be able to have that opportunity, I started looking at like, could I teach some tools? I had done a lot of personal research for myself, so I thought, what the heck, I might as well share with these people. And for the most part, in all the different fields that I worked in, I did share that with people. Then when I decided to open a center and kind of like get real about it, then it was really kind of interesting, because then I brought all those skill sets to fruition. I had to put down programs, put skills together, look at approaches for them. I begged, borrowed, and stole things from everybody and their brother, and then amended it, and from what I had learned, to be able to get it out of the context. The old traditional context, traditional was a good or bad. And so if you didn't do something, it's because you were bad, or you couldn't do it, or there was something wrong with you. I was like, wow, that's bad. No. So we start to recognize that, no, that's really not so much that way. There are a lot of automatic systems going, because, once again, we're mostly operate unconscious. That's good news. We don't have to worry about anything, right? So we just simply, wherever our attention goes, we focus on that. That's good. But it does make it very small. And being very small was okay, because there was a time where you developed a personality when you were young, and you could put it on your tombstone, because when you died, you were pretty much the same. That doesn't ring true anymore. It's been that way for a long time. We see people accomplish greatness, not just one or two, but a lot of people. So in that transition of opening it up, I recognize that we're going to be struggling with moving in that direction. And I thought some resources were available. So I do a lot of background. I do have education in psychology. I did a lot of reading and backgrounds on evolutionary psychology, and taking a look at what would serve people. And what I found was that what would serve people the most is to use different tools of awareness. Because right now, we basically process through stories. We see something, and then we tell someone, oh, I just saw that. You get a 5 or 6-year-old kid, and they said, hey, watch me run. I can run really fast. Okay. You see, that storytelling. That's how we put us in it. That's how we mark our progress. People tell us stories. We tell stories about us. We tell stories about other people. Really, what we're saying is that we influence each other tremendously. but we don't look at it as that's an influence. We look at it as just it's a story, but it affects us, tremendously affects us. And if that effect is limiting, reducing, then it becomes defensive. If I say, oh, my friend Bob, he's got sick. I have no idea why he's sick, but so I could say, do I want to go over and help Bob who's sick and maybe help him because he's sick and he can't clean his house and he can't cook for him? Do I want to go help him? Or do I want to stay away so I don't get sick? Right? That seems so simple, but we're either in a huge chunk of the defense, like, oh, Bob's sick, I'm going to stay away from him for a while. It's a legitimate thing, right? We see it. It's legitimate. Or you sit there and say, I should go help Bob because he's sick and he's my friend. So I should go help him. And if I get sick, I get sick. It's like, right? But I might be wise. Maybe I'll take some supplements. Maybe I'll do whatever. I mean, I'm not here to tell you what to do because I have no idea. Those are decisions you have to make. But you start to see if you make those decisions, you're opening up a bigger range of information that you have to look at. And I think that's the nature of learning. And I think that develops a platform for potential. Potential doesn't come from a story. A story is based on what you know. It's just simply to put you into it. Potential comes from absolutely unknown. So potential is changing the habit of who and what you do and are. That's it. So if you want to work out, start out by doing 1 push-up every day. And then when you feel comfortable, increase it to 2. If it goes 6 months at 1 push-up every day, that's fine. But it doesn't take that long. Once you start developing a habit, we're really good at developing habits, but we have to initiate them. Potential is developing a habit about unknown, researching it, digging into it, finding out something about what we don't know. Some people are inspired to do that. I was always inspired to do that, others not. So it needs to just start for you, right? An awful lot of people just get defensive. Like, oh, I don't want to know about that. It scares me. Like, I don't know. Tell me all about it. I don't mind. Like, let's dig into it. So for some people, it's easier. For some, it's more challenging. What we can all feel is we can feel when energy starts to flow in our body. We call that emotion. I don't care if you're sitting there and somebody upsets you and you get pissed off, you can feel that building up. Or if somebody says, would you go take the trash out? And you sit there saying, okay, yeah, sure, I'll go get the trash out. And all of a sudden you feel like you're getting up, you're moving, you're doing it. It's like, wow, okay, that's the energy coming to emote, to flow into it. We don't have to analyze the mitochondrial and blah, 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 and all that other stuff to know all that. We just feel it. So if there's influences on it that we don't feel, it's because we haven't attended to them. So I started putting classes together, ideas I took from people, ideas that I put into myself, ideas I took from people I twisted and turned and made my own version of it. And so I put it together so we'd have some really basic 3 classes, basic classes. People come in and can start to feel that energy of movement, right? And it affects them. How long will that affect them? Truthfully, not very long, right? They'll come in and they get that. They have some stories that are changed. That means that I'm changing the idea of me. That's the starting of knowing something more about you. And if they do that, and they're a person who has a personality that asks more questions, they'll be able to sail with that. But that's not the bulk of the people. The bulk of the people are really the people that said, oh, that was nice, and then they let it go, right? So they need some more reinforcement from it. The habit of your life is the path to potential. Increase something different in your life. It's really difficult to say, hey, I'm so busy now, I don't have time for something different. Well, that's why you have to create a new range, right? Not that you have to do it that way. If you could abandon things that you do, then that would be fine. If you would say, I'm not smoking anymore. But we all know that an awful lot of people that, like, for example, quit smoking, they start chewing gum, they start doing one of the things, they're trading a habit for a habit, right? Or people that are eating food and getting fat, then they start going on with diet food or low-fat diets or whatever, right? all of that is an implement to some relative degree for a relative period of time, right? So the best you're going to get from the human race is to be able to inspire them to create a new habit, at least for a time. They may next year come back and sit in classes again. I've had that happen so many times. And they say, yeah, I took all these classes before. I'm taking them again because I forgot them all. I quit using them and I don't remember any of it. Okay. And then they start taking it. And usually I got 3 beginning classes. And by the time they're into the second one, they go, I don't need to take the third one again. I got this. What else you got? So at that point, then we have to take the same for a longer period of time. So I'm writing the same 6-week class for 6 months. So I have to then zoom in and going into more details. I have to break that little piece of change down into a multitude of different contexts, different approaches for it, so that each time they're looking at it through a new set of eyes, a new state of who they are. A state just means who you think you are. If you say, I'm hungry, well, that's pretty much a trigger for the state I want to eat, right? Or if you're horny, or if you're angry, or if you're whatever, that's pretty much, you're starting to feel that and you're saying, oh, that's a state that I'm in. I'm in a state of frustration. I'm in a state of unknown. I'm in whatever. So we feel those transitions. We label them and we give broad labels to them. So then we get confused sometimes because the ranges have been, the labeling has been too broad. So if we start to play with this, the longer class for like 6 months starts to give you better labeling context. So you start to feel the difference between, am I angry or am I just frustrated? Or what's going on when all of a sudden we're having a conversation and it seems like you're not getting it? What am I doing wrong? What is coming on? Am I communicating it wrong? Or are you just not hearing it right? I could assume that I'm right and you're wrong, or I could assume that you're right and I'm wrong. But neither one of those do anything but make up a story. They don't fix the problem. So at some point, I have to in-train with you. I have to feel what you're feeling. If I get where I can feel what I'm feeling really good, then I sample you. I allow my guard, my defense to be down for a second and just feel your presence. Like, wow, you operate very similar to me and yet a little bit different. So then I can put out a question that's in my head. Why aren't you hearing this? And I can get a clue of how I have to express it. And then I say it in a different way and you go, oh, I got it now. I totally got it. Oh, such a blessing, such a relief, right? And then we have a 6-month class and you get to play with that. And that becomes the mantra in your head. This is what Chris means when he says this. I got it. Okay, that's it. So then it starts to become more beneficial. Is that going to last you for the rest of your life? Failure rate's pretty high, no matter what, so it's like statistically, they figure 93%. If somebody has a motivation, but 93% comes from the statistics come from that you'll see in a lot of books. It basically says a doctor says somebody like, you have to quit smoking or you're going to, because you got lung cancer, or you're going to have to, you're a diabetic, now you're going to have to cut out sugar. And it's kind of like, and they struggle with that for the rest of their life. If it's a life or death situation, we can get a 93% change. That's pretty scary. Should potential drive you for more? Yeah, I think so, because if you're focused on potential, you're now out of that, I'm done with life, I need to die, and you're now destroying yourself. Now you're looking at like, wow, I'm inspired, I got new potential, I got new ideas. Wow. And next thing you know, you start getting healthier. And that, I think, is the bonus to it. That's why you always see some element of talking about health and wellness in my whole teaching protocol, because I think that that's the carrot. At some point in time, yes, you get an idea, you do a little bit of it. And after you do a little bit of it, you start to get a little bit of what I call inspired by it. Like you find, wow, I did this once or twice and it worked. No, I don't care whether you take some psychic class and you find that you can close your eyes and imagine a parking place and then you'll find one quicker or whatever. it doesn't make any difference, because now you're starting to realize that what if I put my attention, instead of sitting around saying, oh, parking is a mess, I'll never find a place. Well, guess what? I never find a place. What if I look around and say, parking is a really mess? I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to take my psychic ability and I'll find a parking place. And all of a sudden I'll see a turn or a marker and I'll be right there. You see, that's just opening up for reversal. When parking is a problem, what it tells you is that you're going to have to pay more attention. That's it. You got to pay more attention. I lived in San Francisco for years. I drove a truck. I had to find a parking place every night because it wouldn't fit in my garage in my complex, that condos that we were living in. So I had to park on the street. Sometimes I just boom, right up and park. But if I was buried somewhere in some conflict or a dialogue I had someone or some sales situation, I'd be driving around for 20 minutes trying to find a parking place. And finally, I would stop and say, I need to take a breath. My attention is on a problem, not on a solution. So I said, I just need to find a parking place so I can go in a house, finish my paperwork, and relax a little bit. I'm going to get a book out. I'm going to read. I'm going to get past all this because there's nothing I can do tonight to solve the problem. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll worry about it over breakfast. I'm done. And then boom, there's a parking place. Is that magic? No, it's just increasing attention. It's not magic, but it's a motivator. It's an influence. So I don't care what you call it. It's okay, whatever terms you call it. You can say it's your dead grandmother inspiring you. I don't care what it is. I don't care how you label it. It makes no difference. Those are all story indexes. I don't care about the story. I care about the behavior. The behavior creates the difference, because now you're opening a doorway for something you don't know. One little piece at a time allows you to get into the feel of it, to get into the sense of it, to start to open it up, to allow that to flow for potential, right? So if I'm talking about teaching in classes. So as a teacher, I'm telling you that in your life, no matter where you are, because I get people on the phone, I get people that seek me out and find me, but I have teachers that I've trained and they're out there teaching classes. And it's really kind of fun to be able to get communication from them and get stories from them. Once again, those are just indexes, but it's an indication of them saying, wow, I'm getting more and more what you presented, Chris, in your classes are now starting to sink in. I saw it in my approach, my way of seeing it. I got it from talking to you. And now that I'm a teacher, I'm finding that that feels like, at first when I started teaching, it felt like everybody who walked in the door thought like me. And that's the way it works. And you're a big success for a couple of months. And then all of a sudden people walk in the door and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't even talk to these people. They don't know what I'm talking about. So then you've got to be able to go back to that basic, in train with someone, say, wow, where are they coming from? Right? I have got people just upset. I quoted from Joseph Campbell one time, and Joseph Campbell had made a comment to a friend of his. National Geographic had a picture on it on the cover that it was a gazelle down and a lioness was devouring the gazelle, and the gazelle was turning and seeing the attacker. I'm sure the gazelle wasn't going to last very long, a few seconds, but nonetheless, that was the capture of the picture. So Joseph Campbell said, everything on this planet is either eaten or eats something else on this planet. And that's why we have rituals and stories, because we have a hard time talking about that emotionally. We don't like to think about that. We're all going to die somewhere. I'm probably going to die before you, whoever's watching this, because I'm old. But nonetheless, we're all going to go that path. So it's like, we don't want to think about that. I had people step up and walk out of the class. That was like so profound. I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. They don't want to look at that idea. I'm sure they had a story that they told their friends, like, oh, don't go to this guy's class because, he just talks about death or he's negative or whatever. But, I was in town for a while, and next thing you know, within a year or so, they would come in and they would tell me, so and so took a class from you and thought you did a horrible job, but I'm enjoying your class. It was really funny that I eventually became friends with those people who dropped out of my class. A couple of years later, they needed something, so they called me, and then eventually we got on the same page. This is the problem: is stories limit us, and when story limit us, we expect it a certain way. If it doesn't meet that context, we abandon it. If the range gets bigger, we now have an opportunity to experience more things. So I blogged for a whole year about opening range with techniques and skill sets with that. And now this year, I've been blogging for a whole year about being able to establish that empty range. Gosh, so many people are in a 2-bedroom house and they get some kids and they say, oh, we got to move to a bigger house. And they take the 2-bedroom house and they sell it and move all their furniture into a 3-bedroom house. And they scratch their head and they go, oh my goodness, it's like, I mean, we filled this up. It's like, like, this is very confusing, right? It's like we spread it all out. It doesn't feel like we gained very much space, but they gained a lot of space. They just spread it all out. One thing you don't want to do with a range is make it a lateral move. You don't want to dump all this stuff into it. So inherently in basic classes, you want to be able to tell people that when they start getting inspired by something, don't say, oh, now I got it. No, say, now I got the first part of it. Now it's time to move on to the next part of it. Always, it comes to you in bits and pieces, right? And so you get a little snippet and you get a little snippet. I call those little snippets clues, right? Because they don't always make logical sense. They don't always go together. At some point in time, a clue will trigger something because it's unknown, right? So just like I was in Norway quite a few years ago, and I'm with a friend of ours, and we walked into a restaurant, everything's Norwegian. I can't read the menu, so I'm looking, I said, what's that say? And he would say, oh, that says chicken and fish and beef. I said, oh, okay. It's not very informative. I kind of thought in my mind, but he doesn't know how to read the language, maybe. I didn't know where I was at for sure. But then we went to visit a relative of his, and she came with, it's his brother's wife, and she came with us to dinner one night. And I'm looking at the menu and said, okay, tell me what that is. And he says, well, that's fish. And then the next one's chicken, the next one's beef. And I talked to her and she says, well, it's a little different than that. So then she's explaining to me what all of it says. It's like, wow. So there's 5 or 6 options. There's side dishes. Like, I have already been in Norway for a whole week and I didn't know any of this existed because I didn't know the language. So I'm looking at her and said, tell me more. It's like, yeah, I'm starting to look at those words up there and I'm thinking in my brain, I got to remember what that word means when I walk into a restaurant next time. I like that. I don't like that. I like that. I'm starting to develop preferences in a range that I had no knowledge of. Even when you go in a grocery store, I'm looking at a 12-foot cheese section and I'm thinking, wow, it'll be interesting. I'm going to see what all these cheeses are because they're known for their cheeses. They don't give you any information on the labels. It just says cheese, 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 cheese in Norwegian. I got it. I can tell you cheese in Norwegian. I don't know if I can pronounce it, but I can recognize it. But they don't tell me anything about the cheeses. It's like, wow. So I'm buying 4 or 5 different types of cheeses, taking them home because I'm sampling. It's like, and then when I got it, I said, I really like this one, but I don't know how I'd find it again because there's no word on the label on this one any different than on the rest of them. It's like, wow, that's interesting. So they use language skills different than what we do in America. Oh, that's interesting, right? With the new system, you're going to find the identification skills, the markers, we call them within the system, operate a little differently. Like, wow, it's kind of same, but a little different valuation, right? The same with words. I talk about entrainment. We have a word in English for empathy, but that's more associated with sympathy than really And then you look at Germans. Germans have 3 words for that empathy because they have different gradients of it. Different languages have a multitude of different pieces. And you might think that's unusual because I just talked about empathy, but it's not unusual. We look at a rainbow and we see whatever in our colors, but that's not the same. As a matter of fact, an awful lot of cultures on this planet don't separate from blue from green. And for a long time, if you go back and read ancient writings, we didn't have a term very often for blue. We just, because the ocean was blue, the sky was blue, so they figured that blue was the default. So they never wrote about blue. So they'd always look at the sky and they'd see the white clouds. So they'd say, look at the puffy, beautiful white clouds. They never said in a blue sky. They just say, because blue was just like a default. Never said that, right? So you'd say the Mediterranean was a deep red, like a Burgundy wine. Well, it wasn't color red. It was deep because of the fact that the Mediterranean has a sandy bottom. So when you look at it, like you can see all the way down, it's a flat bottom. You can see light reflecting off the bottom. It has a depth into it. And it does have a different shade of blue than the Atlantic and the Pacific, right? So those are all elements. As a matter of fact, where the Atlantic Pacific collide, they're not even quite level. The water's kind of turbulence back and forth, and you can see the coloration differences if you get down to the southern part of our globe. If we spend time in traveling, time in cultures, we start to notice, oh, the way they define those differences are really very, very uniquely different. When somebody says spicy and not spicy food, it's like, wow. In America, I go to a Thai restaurant, I go to an Indian restaurant, they say, how spicy? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. I have spent months in Thailand. I have spent months in India. I have spent many, many trips to China. I have never in my life had anybody in a restaurant in any one of those countries say anything about how spicy. And I got a friend of mine that I travel with, and he said, oh, I've been to India once before. Oh, my food was unbelievably spicy. So we walked into a restaurant, and I ordered curry chicken, and he ordered some lamb dish. And he's eating that, and he's going, oh, my mouth's on fire. This is really hot. I'm eating the chicken. It's like, it's not hot at all. And I don't eat spices. It's not hot at all. And I say, taste my chicken. And he tastes it, and he goes, they forgot to spice it. I said, no. You're eating lamb. They put really strong spice on the lamb because they don't like the aftertaste. That's their culture. You didn't know that. He goes, oh, every time I've come here before, I always ordered the lamb because it's hard to get at home. Well, that's why it's always been spicy, because that's what they do. So for the rest of the trip, he was ordering everything else but lamb. And it was like, oh my God. It's like, I always thought this was like horribly spicy food. It's not horribly spicy at all. It's not. I had the same experience in Thailand, the same experience in China. It's like, no, and in Mexico City, I can go in a restaurant and eat any food. There's no spice on it. You go to the border towns and you got to be really careful. There's a lot of chili peppers, but no, nowhere, right? And I've been to Yucatan, all down through that area down there, many trips and down there. I've been in all kinds of restaurants all over the place. I go in and order the food. They don't say how spicy. I don't say anything. Yeah, sometimes they give you peppers on the side. I don't eat those, but I eat the food. It's not spicy. But up here in the United States, I've got to kind of be real cautious going to Hispanic restaurants because they'll come back and they'll want to really load it up with all kinds of spices. And now today, as the quality of meat, I think, has dropped into a lot of restaurants, you see them get spicier and spicier and spicier because if it's really spicy, you don't notice the poor quality of the beef. It's tough, has an aftertaste to it. That's just the whole nature of it. So this is just simply you learning tools to make assessments better about the situation. Yes, I'm telling you stories because that's how we communicate. if we could sit one-on-one, we could do an entrainment. We could then talk about, wow, what's lighting up when this energy change? Do you feel that? Do you feel this? I just felt a little ping in my head. It's like all those things we're sensitive to. If we were going to make it a protocol, going to do something about it, have a big reaction to it, then we'd lose that sensitivity because the law of conservation says, hey, we can't do this, right? Come on, people get pissed off and get a rage and stomp and scream and get in trouble and wind up in jail all the time. You know, they're missing that message. They really need to pull back a little bit and say, wow, I just got upset with that person. Why is that? Right? You know, there are times when I'll just tell someone, hey, pay attention to me. Look at me. Pay attention. I'll go in and I'll order something and someone says, did you want this with? I said, stop. Pay attention to me. Your job is to hear me, not my job to make you hear me. So you look at me. I will say it one more time. If you don't get it right this time, I'm walking out. So listen. And they just pay attention. You know, I have done that. And now when I walk in that restaurant, they know me. They're not mad at me. They're not upset. It's just like, it's just amazing. It's just a communication. And if you get their attention, attention is the key. If you get their attention, someone, the people with me behind me they go, oh my God, you just insulted that person. Said, no, I did not. You're listening to the story and you're not noticing the energy communication. I'm not insulting them. I'm telling them, pay attention to me. Pay attention. And when I got their attention, we got a little buzz going. Okay, now this is what I want. Listen. And I tell them, and they're looking right in my eye. And they go, I got it. And they remember it. Yeah, I got a lot of places I walk in, they go, hey, you want your usual? I go, yeah, you have any specials though that might talk me out of it? You know, and I give them a chance to pitch me on something. I said, yeah, whatever. So you see how the game changes? It gets bigger, it expands out more, and more opportunities come to you. There's more diversity. Literally, I tell the story all the time. It's like, I don't like to cook the same food every day. As a matter of fact, when I was raising my kids, it was a dilemma with leftovers with kids, because sometimes you put food out and they devour everything. And other times you put it out and they're all stressed out for a test or something, and they eat very little because they're just like, oh, I can't eat right now, I'm nervous or whatever. It's like, whatever. So I'd have leftovers, and it's like, gosh, I hate putting leftovers out because they're not very stimulating. So finally I got a kind of a way of, in the beginning, I would do like a lot of people, I'd mix them with rice. I don't eat potatoes. I'd mix them with rice or something along that line. And and then finally it says, that's pretty boring, because almost like every other night we're having rice mix or whatever leftovers are. So then I started making crepes. And then I thought, great, I had crepes in the freezer. So if we had leftover, I don't care if it was an omelet, it was leftover. It went into a crepe. And I had 4 or 5 jars in the refrigerator. Every Sunday I'd make new toppings, Mornay sauce, hollandaise sauce. I'd have 4 or 5 of them in there. So I would take whatever leftover was, I'd chop it all up, roll it up in those crepes, put it in the oven, warm that rascal up, put that sauce on it, put it in their plate. And it's like, wow, this is it. How'd you make this? I said, I don't think it could be duplicated. It's a leftover, but most certainly has taken on a different characteristic, a little spices on it, a little sauces, and it became an adventure. Do you see how that opening a range up, building diversity, starts to get you into a potential? So, it's just like, I have negotiated deals where I took classes, and instead of pay for the classes, I did all the cooking for all the events. I did cooking for 2 or 3 years for 200 people. I just put all the menus together, put the budgets together, put it all together, cooked all the food, and I got to take all the classes for free. Do you see how I'm not a cook? I don't want to be a chef. It's a lot of work. But you see, it's a potential I could utilize. You don't have to. I would say that's a becoming. I could most certainly become that. I can remember one time I was cooking for an event. There was 180 people, and I was putting together a tricolor pasta. Um, and I had 2 or 3 people that were helping me in the kitchen and were prepping it. And then all of a sudden, I had a group of people come in, and they say, "Oh, we were told there's a wedding on the other side of this complex, and they said we could use the kitchen." I said, "You can use the kitchen, but I'm using the kitchen right now, and I got 200 people over here I'm feeding." And they go, "Oh, okay. Well, we'll just set up over here in the table." And so they set up over there, we set up over there, and we're working together. And next thing you know, they would say, "Hey, you got some over there?" And I'd pass it to them. And it's just like, and we had all this camaraderie going back and forth. Everybody on our side was happy. Everybody with their wedding event, they had 140 people for a wedding. And everybody was happy go lucky. We exchanged phone calls, we exchanged things. All those guys that were in there cooking wind up taking classes eventually. We had conversations afterwards, and it's like, because we all had a common goal. It was not a place of conflict, but the woman who had booked them in and told them they could use the kitchen, when she came in with them, she saw us in there and she got all so pissy. "I'm going to the office about this. Is ridiculous." She was really mad. Never saw her again, because we just looked at each other and said, "Hey, we'll make this work." What the heck? She never came back. I think she went to the office and they said, "Hey, let them work it out." I'm sure they said that, because that was pretty much the end of it. It was very interesting. So these are just stories, but I'm telling you the stories because they were a potential. We can get this sense of conflict. And so it's just, I can remember one time we had ordered for an event, we had ordered an ice sculpture, big event, a couple hundred people. And they got it totally wrong. They literally got it mixed up, and they gave us some ice sculpture, like it was some religious cross, and like we had a men's group. It's like, that's not what we were after. So we had ordered something and it was something totally different. Well, here we are, we're looking at the ice sculpture and we say, "Well, that's a trip," so we're all just joking about it. We're having a really good time. And so I just went over to the guy running the thing and I said, "That was a great event. It was really fun. We'll come back here next year. But next year, I would appreciate it if you get the right ice sculpture." So the guy goes up and he looked at the paperwork and he said, "This is what you ordered." I don't remember what it was anymore. I said, "No, yeah, that's what I ordered, but not what I got." So he goes, "Oh my goodness. So what you got, you didn't complain, you didn't say anything, so you just accepted it and you're fine?" "Yeah." He said, "The other group got really pissed and they got an attorney. And because we didn't give them what they want, they want their refund of their money back they paid for the ice sculpture." I said, "Okay." I said, "What a mess." I said, "So the truth is that's you guys' problem, not my problem. But I'm telling you, we're willing to work with you. And all the accommodations of service were fine, except for the ice sculpture. And, one mistake in life is really pretty small. I have made a lot more than one mistake in my lifetime." So the guy said, "Next year when you come back, whatever you want, you tell me. It's no charge." I said, "Great." So we used that place for 3 years, and he never charged us for the ice sculpture. He made one every year. So I was like, wow. So you see how we bonded with that? And I'm sure that other group probably never came back because they got pissed about an ice sculpture. So the accommodations were great. The service was great. Noise level was calm. It was just a great place. It just worked very smooth and it fit within our budget. You got to look at the reality in life and not the story. Like, there's always going to be some crisis that occurs. Nothing ever goes complete. In your story, it's just this way. But in the world story, because they all think differently than what you do, all kinds of variables occur. Don't go being so arrogant that you are right. Be arrogant that you can notice the difference and communicate about it. You can see it. You're not blind to it, but don't make somebody wrong over your arrogance. That's where arrogance needs to be, in the center balance. Yes, we used to call that certainty or confidence. I like arrogance because all of a sudden it's instilling. It's like, oh, arrogance can be good or bad. Confidence can also be good or bad, right? I have seen an awful lot of people that were confident, and when I questioned them, they got arrogant. It's like they're pretty closely tied together, right? So let's go to the one with the most emotional charge, is what I like to do, my rule of thumb. So this is just kind of a badger back and forth. So I have talked about beginning classes. I talked for 2 whole months about teaching, what we call level 1, level 2 teaching. I'm going to sum this up. I keep saying it's going to be short. This time I'll see if I can actually accomplish that goal. Level 1 teaching is, once again, like 2 plus 3 is 5. Level 2 teaching is A plus B is C. It's assignment. A is 2, B is 3, C is 5. It's assignment. When you make assignment, you can have that be anything. People like to think, oh, I'm born and I'm special. Maybe. I think that most certainly there's a mixture of an influence. We can call that DNA. You can call it whatever you want to, but there's a mixture of an influence that comes into the package. So yes, is there a symbol? Is it predetermined by design, or is it a random piece? That's what we don't really know. We do know that most of life is redundancy. It's called habit. It's redundancy. So change in who we are is a product of changing redundancy, doing something different. We're just simply redundant. So to be able to have the design be a scramble and then have it be redundant totally makes sense to me. But if you want to think that something up there has designed it because you're super special and you're going to be whatever, okay, that's fine. As long as you can do with it, as long as you can work with that, right? I find an awful lot of people get frustrated because they think, nobody respects me. I hear that. And they go like, nobody respects me. And I go, well, maybe you need to entrain with them a little bit rather than push you onto them. Maybe you just need to play with it. Or maybe you need to push you onto them and then apologize back and say, I'm sorry I said that. What was your response when I said that? I want to hear what your response was so I realize how bad I screwed up. Go ahead and admonish me because I really need to change the habit of being a jerk. Well, that's a different switch. You know, and then I get people that look and say, well, yes, I got offended when you spoke, but I don't think you did anything wrong. What you said was true. It's just that, okay, I got it. So I told you the truth, but I was a little too pushy, too much energy in it, too forceful, and then we're starting to narrow it down. Next thing you know, we're friends, right? And next thing we're like, yeah, and they want my email address. They want to talk to me. And it's like, because we just open up communication. The world will work if we can open up communication, right? And wars, conflicts, and everything tells you that communication doesn't work. And now today they like to say, oh my goodness, it's because there's so many lies. I'm sorry. If you go back in history and study any president in the United States, let's get rulers down through history, they've all lied about everything because they wanted their way in it for whatever reason, their arrogance or whatever. It made no difference. That is a normal piece. It's normal that somebody's going to set it up to be they want it to be. Setup's there, I think, for a reason. I'm saying when you get clues, you start to say, wow, I got a clue and it actually worked. That was interesting. That is how you start to learn set up for your potential, not set up to get your way, right? But set up for your potential. How do I learn more, right? So people send me a question about the meaning of life, and I all of a sudden send them something back as a response. A link of some sort, a couple of pages. I got hundreds of thousands of pages of notes on computers. And they go, oh, that's amazing. It's right on target. That was exactly what I asked for. How do I find more about that? And my response is, ask me another question. You don't need more till you master that. So ask me another question. So then they respond. They go, well, that is funny that you said that. Here's something else that bothers me. And then I send them something else and they go, wow, that's amazing. Do you have more of that? I says, do you have more questions? Well, send me another question. At some point in time, after 3 or 4 months of this, they come back and said, holy shit, you have sent me so much stuff, I just don't know what to do with it all. Now you're getting to the answer of your question. There is so much potential in life, you don't know what to do with it all. So get into a habit of, let's take this piece, let's take this piece, let's take this piece. I can remember when I was trying to do flyers for workshops and material for workshops, and I was trying to do it 2 months ahead so people could then get it onto their schedule to come, and all of a sudden the light goes on, and I said, every December, I'm going to schedule 365 days for events. I'm making posters for it. I'm putting everything on it. I didn't have spaces to book them. I didn't know how it was going to work out. I didn't even have curriculum for them. I just made flyers for them. I had a board, huge board, with all these flyers stuck on them. So you could walk in come the 1st of January and schedule your whole calendar for the whole year with Chris's events if you wanted to, or pick whichever one you want from the titles. I had guys that would come back and they'd say, Chris, every year you put out a mail flyer, you have a different picture on it, but you have the same content, like 6 points that you're going to cover, but below it. He said, every year you use the same 6 points, but you have a different picture. I said, yeah. He said, why don't you change the content? It's a male retreat. I don't need to change the content. I need you to learn more about the content. Every year, a picture impresses you more than the words. If I change the words, you wouldn't notice it. I change the picture, you notice it. The picture influences you. And we're going to look at the same thing from a different view. You go, how long does that happen? As long as you're a man. If you become a woman, all of a sudden, I'll probably have to change the topic. Right? And they're kind of like, huh? I said, come on. That's the differentiation. We only have 2 genders. Well, for the most part. And so we start to look at those from that viewpoint. To look at someone else's viewpoint's a problem. I don't have a problem with gays. I don't have a problem with any of that. That's not an issue in my world. But I'm just saying that when you look at a potential for your body, if you're going to tie it into your body, then you've got to start to take a look. I had a lady come to me one time and she said, I graduated from engineering. I'm a woman and I can't get a job. And I said, well, what kind of engineering do you want to? She says, well, I'm an engineer. I said, okay, fine. Go down to a job site and get a job working. As a laborer? Yeah, as a laborer. I got a degree. Go down and get a job site working as a laborer. So she did. And guess what she got? A job wheeling cement in wheelbarrows on a job site they were building. They had to take the cement, dump it in wheelbarrows. They couldn't pump it in and wheel it down through ramps and dump it. It's like not an easy job for a woman. It's a lot of weight in a wheelbarrow. And she did that for 3 months. And then after 3 months was up, she says, now what I do? I said, now send your degree and start to bid on jobs. Boom. From that day forward, she was working as an engineer. She just had to bridge the gap. It's hard for a lot of people to imagine. They looked at her and they said, here's a woman, she don't know anything about engineering. She pushed a wheelbarrow for 3 months. Now a man looks at her and said, I think here's a woman that knows something about engineering. You see that silly little switch? Do you think we don't notice this stuff? We don't notice it consciously, but it affects us. She all of a sudden became somebody that knew something. Assuming that what I said was correct. I'm telling you the story because this is the way it happened. So this is the way it unfolded. And she got into it. Later on, she wanted to become an environmental engineer. She wanted to do something different. It's like goes on and on and on, because that's what we do. We refine tune it, we different range, we start to tweak it in. She came back and talked to me several times down through 10 years, right? And made changes with relationships with all the above. And it's like, wow, it's kind of interesting. But we were able to implement those just simply by being able to change the habit. And the habit of who you are starts to define you way more than the story does, right? Way more than the story, right? So the story engages us. And so I love getting in conversations. People say, I've done this. I say, I've done this. I've done this. I've done that. I've done that. I've done that. Just because the fact that it opens it up. And if we're going back and forth and that engages back and forth for a while, it's not about what I've done or what they've done. All of a sudden, it's more freedom to be able to say, well, I've done that. Well, I've done that. Well, I've done that. So at first, it feels like there's a competition. After about an hour, it's like, wow, I'm sitting with a group of people that have a huge amount of diversity. And now my relationship to that group dynamic is like, these are strangers I don't know. Now it's like, these are people that I have done a lot of things. They have done a lot of things. This is really cool. I can just relax now. It's like, there's no judgment. It's like, wow, we've done this, we've done that, we've done this. You know that, I know this, you know this. This is nice. I might talk to you again. I got some questions about that. All of a sudden, we've come to an equal ground. We've all exposed the fact that we've had range and skills and diversity. There's no more competition. We're good. We're okay. We got some respect. It's like, we can work together. We got this. Just like the people in the kitchen. We got this. We're all just cooks. We're just going to do this. That's the goal. Integration, being able to come together. I don't care what your story is. As you start to interchange, as you start to feed in, don't try to one up. Just notice, oh, I've done that. Oh, I've done that. I've done that. Like, wow, I've done that. Like, wow, that's okay. And it starts to, you get a flow of it. You start to go, wow, that's intriguing. So I get people out of the blue that send me an email and they call up and said, hey, you helped so-and-so. They were trying to do this. What's going on? And I said, yeah, we can get through that. No problem. So we just an hour and a half, 2 hours on the phone. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, I didn't look at it that way before. This is really interesting. All of a sudden, all that anxiety is leaving my body. Yeah, because the unknown was totally intimidating. It represented all unknowns. Now we just define the unknown within a concept, a range. That's it. It's an unknown in a range. That's not everything. That's a range. Not so threatening, right? No, not so threatening. And so you have an idea of what's going to occur. You have an idea what the protocol is. You have an idea what the experience is. You have the reference what is. So then you can start to manage it, reference it. So people that know, people that had experience become a resource, reduces your anxiety, allows you to embrace the unknown and to have whatever experience you have. Hey, some things are really a pain dealing with, right? It's just like, I was glad to lose all my hair because then I didn't have to go get a haircut. I can remember the very first haircut I ever had. I think haircuts were a quarter. I went to a barbershop and sat on a booster chair and he started cutting my hair. And it's like, my grandmother had trimmed my hair with the scissors. I just thought that's what he was going to do. I had no idea. Would have been nice to have some information. Setup is pathetic. So I'm getting carried in. He set me up in that chair and he gets this thing over and it's buzzing. It's starting to buzz all over my head. And it's like, it scared the shit out of me. I was just like crying and like walked out of there and I'm going, wow. And so the next time, a couple of months later, my mother said, you need another haircut. And I said, give me a quarter. I'll go. And she said, it's 4 blocks down there. And I said, no problem. I know where it's at. I'll go. Give me a quarter. And so she gave me a quarter. I went on down there and I went in there and I sat down and it was my turn. I got up with my quarter and I climbed up there and gave him the quarter and he buzzed my hair and did whatever. And it's like, it was not a problem. And he said, oh, you handled that really good, this time. I said, yeah, now that I finally found out what the heck was going on, I just had no idea, right? It was an unknown. Once it got known, it was not a problem. It don't hurt. It doesn't do anything. It wasn't scary. It wasn't going to kill me. It wasn't going to do anything. Like, it was easy. Got the hair out of my eyes when I had hair that would get in my eyes. It's been a long time. That's maybe 70 years ago. But anyway, as you start to see the changes that occur in our relationship with it, I'm just telling you stories so you can search in your database and say, oh, wow, I had things I was kind of intimidated by, or this is going to be hard, or oh my goodness, taxes are such a pain. And this is like, they want this and they want that. You got to do a little research sometimes, which I had to do. And I had to go through and search things out. I had to go read some of the guidelines and look at some of those things. And then I had to go talk to a few people. So I had to make friends with a couple of tax accountants. It's not the easiest thing in the world because I don't know what tax accountants talk about for fun. But anyway, I did have a few people come in the door and they were taking classes and they say, what are you doing? They say, tax accountant. Says, oh, great. Not at class time, but one day this week when you have time, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. I got some questions to ask you. And I would sit down and ask them questions. I said, hey, tell me how it works. And they'd always say, well, this is the law and this is what kind of they're trying to do. And this is kind of the range where you can get away with. Great. I'm got notes. It got easier, right? It got simpler when I started having more data as I filled in the range. And then I could understand it. And then it was like, not a problem. So all my paperwork got sorted. All of it got figured out. I only need to keep this. I only need this. I can get rid of this. It's like, that doesn't mean anything. I'm writing notes down. The end of the year was really simple. One day and I got it all done. I just needed to have more information, not information from government brochures that just tell you there's a law, but how to assess it, how to put it together, how to protocol. Only the people in the business really kind of know how to do that. So I bought more than one tax accountant a cup of coffee. I spent more than 1 hour asking questions. This is the idea of attention and questions building range. This is how we merit this. This is how we expand this out. Most people have concerns and questions about health. And then they sit there and they say, what do I do? I'm not anti-doctor. I'm not anti any of those things. But I think that the first order of business is you have to say, what did I do that created this situation? Holy shit, I'm 40 pounds overweight. What do I do? When I retired, I was 40 pounds overweight, not for working. When I was working, throwing boxes around, throwing cases around, lifting things that weighed 150 pounds, yeah, 40 pounds made a difference, right? I most certainly needed that. And then when I retired, I said, okay, I started a program. I said, I'm putting a program together. I'm going to go on a diet. My goal is to lose that 40 pounds, 43 pounds, to be truthful, to lose that 43 pounds somewhere over the next 10 years, if I live that long. And all these people said, oh, yeah, they joined up. I had like 40 people join up. And everybody's saying their goal. And everybody's goal was totally unrealistic. And I said, I want to lose 40 pounds in 10 years. And all you guys want to lose 80 pounds in 2 weeks. It's like, that ain't going to happen. So I'm suggesting you guys will meet again next month and we'll start the whole protocol next month with our diet and we'll communicate back and forth. Yes, I set up a Facebook page with a private page where we could talk and nobody could get into it. And we did that back and forth. Silliness, one of the girls set that up. And so we would go back and forth by our weight. We weighed ourselves every day. We looked at body mass indexes. We did this whole protocol for a couple of months, 3 months. And then we went back and did it again and did it again several times through the year so that we could interrupt the pattern of regaining weight. Yeah, I lost that 40 pounds in probably 7.5 years. And by the time another year went by, I just managed to maintain it. And now I just maintain it, not a problem. I'm at the weight I anticipated and goals for a long time now. But it didn't take 10 years to get there. But most certainly I set it up when I was 60 years old. And by 70 years old, I was there. Now I'm 80 years old and it's like has not been an issue. Oh, yeah. Every now and then when I travel, I might put weight on, but sometimes when I travel, I lose weight. It depends on what the foods do in a culture. You really don't have a whole lot of choice. Well, you have some choice, but not a whole lot of choice in different cultures, right? And a lot of foods in different worlds because they don't have refrigeration. That means that meat never got refrigerated. So if they slaughtered an animal at 6 o'clock in the morning and they sold it to whatever restaurant and they cooked it for dinner that night at 7 o'clock. It'd been sitting in India on 120-degree heat all that period of time. Yeah, not the healthiest way in the world to go, thanks. But I made it through. I made it through 2 months in India. A couple of people I traveled with got sick for a short time, maybe a couple of weeks, and we got over it. They were eating some things that I said, you guys might not want to do that, but they did. And it's like, oh, okay, you were right. So we'll stay away from some of that. And then, and then finally, as somewhere trumping around in the hills and climbing all over the place and hiking in South India, I got like pneumonia. So I was running a fever. So they said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to get up in the morning and go with you guys. And when I get tired, I'm going to sit my butt down and take a nap. You can come back and pick me up on the way back. And that's what I did. So for 10 days, I had 2 eggs for breakfast. I ate nothing else. That was it. 2 eggs for breakfast, 10 days. And by the time the 10 days were up, I said, okay, I think I'm done it. Did I sweat a lot? Yeah, most certainly. But did I walk every day? Yeah, a half day, at least. And then rest for a while. And then get back up and walk with them back. Yes, most certainly. But they went out to dinner and I didn't go eat. When we got all done with the day and they said, we're going to go eat, I said, great, you go eat. I'm going to take a shower and I'm going to lay down. I'm going to need that extra few hours sleep a lot more than I will. And so that was it. That's what I did. Do I recommend that you should do that? God, no. No, not at all. Because I'm not sure that you have those same elements of relationship. What are you feeling? What's going on in your body? How are you manipulating it? If I got it again tomorrow, would I do the same thing? Probably not. I'd have to look at the setup, figure out what I'm going to do, map it all out, and then implement it. Because another case of what felt like the same thing could be totally different. I need more information. It's an assumption to think that when someone coughs, everybody's cough's the same. I understand. The medical model is that we look at certain markers and we throw everybody in that category. And it kind of works 60, 70, 80%, depending on the ailment. But what do the statistics say? The statistics say on original diagnosis, when you walk into a medical clinic, this is a few years back, probably somewhere in maybe 2000, 17% of the original diagnostic that the doctor thought in their head when they saw you turned out to be correct. It's not very big. I'm not saying doctors are bad. I think they're really very good. It's just that they look at something and it's really familiar because they just saw that in 12 patients this week. So they look at that and they said, oh, that's what you got. And they notice the similarity more than the difference. That just makes them human. There's nothing wrong with that. So then they do some more testing. They go, oh, my original diagnosis was wrong. This is what you really have. Okay, cool, right? So that's exactly what happens, right? So it's like you throw it in a category. So if you don't have the background that doctor does and you got aches and pains and you're trying to diagnose and you never had it before, you're an idiot. You really need to get some more information. And I think we've all looked at medical websites and it gives you some information, but not much clarity. But we're not looking at something extremely dangerous. We're trying to find out how dangerous it is. If there's a likelihood that it's going to be dangerous, go see a doctor. I said, hey, take a look. Where am I at on the scale? Is this going to be like life or death, or is this going to be like, 1 month of misery? And what do you have that might help that? And what are the side effects of that? Because maybe a month of misery might be better than a lifetime of misery. So all those things we have to start to look at it and weigh out. There's no a certain way. There is no right way. There is no persistency to all the above. I remember I had a group of advanced Explorer Scouts. We went on a hike for a week. And, we're out there cooking. It's an Explorer Scout. So we're picking miner's lettuce. We're finding plants. We're identifying things. We're cleaning them up. We're using resources that are around and cooking them. And it's just like all of a sudden one day we all got sick. And it was like the day before we were leaving. So the last day while we kind of got back into foods that we had on our backpacks that we knew were safe, right? And we just kind of stayed with that. And we all thought we picked up something from the water or something like that. And it was kind of interesting because there was 14 of us total. And all of the boys, their parents took them to the doctor. 14 kids. We had 7 different diagnostics. So literally, we had picked up 7 different 7 different things. Yes. Either the hike was too enduring, they got stressed. So the food that we ate maybe had bacteria in it, but it affected 14 kids 7 different ways because they all had 7 different cures, 7 different diagnoses. So wasn't always the friends or the ones that were hiking together. It was like really kind of interesting. I just checked in with everybody because I was the leader, and I thought it's great. I'll find out what the boys had, and I'll just go down and get a script for it. And it's like they all had something different. So I said, well, I guess I'll just deal with it. If I die, I die. If I live, I live. It's like whatever. I took the symptomology that I looked up on computer, and it's like, oh, it could be anything of 100 different things. It's like, wow. In that case, I'm not going to worry about it. And all the kids were really delighted. And we went on more trips after that, most certainly, and did the same silliness because I wanted them to be able to. And we saw apples somewhere, like, let's go pick an apple. Let's cut one open and make sure it's not wormy on the inside. Make sure they look good. And we'll go pick apples and we're going to wash them down. They're growing out here wild. There's nobody come through and sprayed bug spray on them, so they're probably going to be a lot safer to eat. And we ate apples. We ate all kinds of things. Those are just engaging, but paying attention, getting pieces of the unknown into context so that we can make real decisions about it. That's how you get to potential. That's it. It's a simple piece of it. I'm going to shut up now, really, and not tell any more stories. I want this to be fairly short. Well, next to October, November, December, we'll talk about long-range programs, ones that might last a couple of years. And I think there's benefit for a couple of them to endure for a period of time, at least for some people. And so I'm going to leave it at that. It's if you have any questions, email me, Chris, that's with 2 S's, CHRISS, at wizardscatch.com, WIZARDSCACHE, wizardscatch.com. And so the emails will come to me. I'd be glad to answer questions. If you're interested in teaching, you want some type of curriculum for classes, I've got curriculum. Curriculum is just a couple of pages. There's a lot to go with it. Besides that, I'd be glad to have conversations on exercises or anything if you're really profound, but just let me know how I can be of service for you, and we can open up some dialogue and communication. And that's all I'm really interested in doing. I'm retired. Well, I accept money and donations. Yeah, but you don't see a button on the bottom say subscribe or donate money. I don't care about any of that. I'm really more interested in you. So where can we go? Because the more I learn about you, the more I learn about what will happen when I move into the next potential. It may be similar to yours. Maybe all that data will be extremely useful, right? Hey, it's ridiculous to deny it. Much, much wiser to go with it, find out more, and have a good time with it. So I want to thank you all very much. It's been fun. And so we'll, if nothing else, see you next month.